welcome to a FlossTube video. This one is a special one. First of all, today is March 1st, 2020, and it is officially my 4-year anniversary here on FlossTube. But the other thing is I like to dye fabric, and up until a couple weeks ago, I hadn't dyed any in a really long time because I have so much dyed fabric from Picture This Plus, and I have still some Barbarelle Create, and as well as my own. So I hadn't dyed fabric in a long time, and I had the itch a couple weeks ago, and I dyed 20 pieces and posted them all on Instagram. I had a bunch of love and comments on those photos, and so I thought I should do an updated tips and tricks video for you guys. Every once in a while you may hear Potter. But do an updated tips and tricks video for you guys on how I personally dye fabric. Now, these tips and tricks are how I dye fabric, and whenever I used to sell it, I never told people that it was color fast, because the truth of the matter is I rinse out my fabrics until the water is clear, but that does not mean 100% that if you finish a piece and were to rinse it, that more dye would not come out. So I never rinse my pieces, no matter who the fabric has been dyed by. It's just not something that I really do. So that is one thing that I will state out there. And the method that I use is the way that I was taught by my mom when using RIT dye. So I use RIT dye. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do a water pan technique that I've done before that can give you some unpredictable results. We're going to do just a splatter style dye, and then we're also going to do where we do a flash dip, and then we do a sprinkle model of a very different color. So I'm also going to talk about the different tools and things that I use. I was going to do an ice dye, but I don't have any ice, unfortunately, but I can describe how to do an ice dye and kind of lightly demonstrate that. And that also uses powdered RIT dye. So it's pretty simple. So we're just gonna dive right in. We're also going to do a couple pieces of clothing, I think. And so we will dye. I'll show you the different ways and things that I do whenever I'm in the dyeing process. I'll show you the colors that I'm going to use and how I mix my dyes. Some of this, once I show it like once or twice, I may leave in some of the footage and just speed it up. Because that's sometimes really fun to watch the process, but not have to watch it at real time. And then we will also show you what it looks like when it's done. Also, stay tuned for later because it's my 4-year anniversary. I want to do a small little giveaway. It's not going to be big. It's not going to be huge. It's going to be small. And so we'll talk about that later on in the video. So stay tuned for that. Okay. And I'll also show you a couple other techniques of fabrics that I have dyed in the past and kind of talk about how you go about getting these styles or looks. And that is that. So I'm going to have 2 screens for some of this. So you'll notice right now that I have water in one side of my sink. I have a stainless steel sink, so I do not mind putting dye in this because I can clean it, but I have just cold plain water in one side of my sink, and you'll see why soon. And then in the other side, I have a cookie resting tray. It's not a tray, but cooling rack, and I usually put 2. So I cover the entire bottom of my other side of my sink, my larger side, with cookie racks. Now, I am okay with using these as well because these are stainless steel and I can get them perfectly clean, and I can still use them for cooking. So mostly I don't use plastic other than my dye bottles. I use stainless steel, or I use glass/glass-like substance, container substances. For my dyeing, I don't want to use plastic because then you can never use those again. Stainless steel and glass, you can. So what is the sink full of water for? Well, fabrics dye better if they are pre-soaked, if they're pre-soaked in water. And that can be from clothing to sheets to our linens and Aidas. And one of the reasons is because when we take these out of these packages, they are so stiff because they have sizing in them. Okay, so what the water is going to do is it's going to release some of that sizing and it's going to make it like flowy fabric. And also the sizing can affect the way that it dyes. So if it has a lot of sizing in it, you may not want to soak it as long because it can add to the modeling. But it just depends on what look you're going for. And also, whenever the dye, because it's wet, whenever the fabric is pre-wetted, the dye can like easily spread and kind of get that faded out look. If you've ever dyed dry fabric, you get a little bit of fading on the sides, but it's not as feathered or as blended, if we want to kind of relate it to those terms. So I'm also going to put my clothing items in there. I'm going to do a t-shirt, a nicer blouse, and a tank top. And I'm mainly doing it because I've been meaning to and just haven't, but it'll also be fun to show you some different types of fabric. Also, these fabrics are different percentages of cotton, spandex, polyester. So it'll also give you an idea of what some of the different fabrics, how they dye. Today I was only able to get Aida in my town. So just note that the vibrancy of certain colors is going to be different whether you are doing Aida or linen or even weave. One more. So I'm going to dye 3 pieces of Aida today. The smallest size is going to be in our water pan. My medium size is going to be my flash dye with the very distinct color change modeling. And then the other one is going to be what I kind of call the sprinkle splash slash splash dye. That's a tongue twister, you guys. So I'm going to mix my color in my second sink. So something that I've already done is I already went ahead and put iodized salt in all of my containers, and you can kind of see it in there. There we go. Nice. Okay. I also have all of my colors spread out here. Today I'm going to be using sterling blue, tan, pearl gray, lemon yellow, aquamarine, sunshine orange, black, and fuchsia. Okay, so I'm just gonna go in order down the line. So I just give it a little bit of a stir, the dye bottle, and I eyeball it. I don't use precise measurements, but I put about that much dye in the bottle with the salt. And I leave the dye bottles out for a couple of reasons. One, I leave them out in case I need more dye. If the fabric is bigger than I think, if I'm dyeing a whole bunch of fabrics and I just might need extra. So I definitely do that. But I also, some of the colors in the bottle in their concentrate look the same. So I also do it so that way I can stick it in front of the bottle and know exactly what color it is, because I don't want any confusion. Some of them are obvious, like the lemon and the fuchsia. Some of them are very obvious, but whenever you do like gray and black and things like that, or even some of the dark blues and purples, they look the same until you start squirting them out, and you don't want to mess up your colors. Okay, So I switch my water back to warm or hot, and then essentially I just put water in the bottle up to the top. I put a cap on, and then I put the little lid on and I give it a shake just to make sure that it is well blended, and I'll leave the cap on until I'm ready to use that color. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of my colors. You're gonna notice that orange and black I am not gonna make one of my bottles for, and that is because those are the two colors that I am doing the full dip color with the distinct modeling. So those are gonna be done in a different way, and I don't need bottles for them. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up all my other colors, and then we'll get started. I'm gonna very quickly dye some of the clothing, only because I am gonna need this sink free. So basically what I'm going to do is bunch up this shirt, and this shirt in particular I want to do in blues and a little bit of tan. So I'm gonna use the two different blues. And I'm just going to splash this around, in some places heavier than others. I'm gonna make sure to get that lighter blue in there. And then we're gonna do some of the tan. Just in a few choice spots. I'm gonna let that sit for a few moments, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick it up and flip it over so that way we can get the other side, make sure that we get a pretty even application. Oh, there's a pretty big blank spot right here though. Let's take care of that. Sprinkle, sprinkle. And we'll take care of some of these other big blank spots whenever we readjust the fabric. We kind of want some of those white spots as well. So we're gonna flip it over. We're gonna bunch it in a different way, different angles. Okay, and then we're gonna give this side a go. So again, little splash therapy. Gonna do the aqua color. And then we're going to get some of this tan in there as well. Let this sit, and then we'll see if there's any really big white spots, and if there are, then we can sprinkle and slash some of those with some color, and then this will go and sit in the washing machine so we can give it a little wash or a little rinse, and then we will dry it and we will check it out at the end of the video. That looks pretty cool, actually. I don't know if I want to change anything about that. So first what we're gonna do is we are going to rinse this off first. You will notice that some of the colors do fade a little bit, but I wanna rinse it out as much as absolutely possible. And you can rinse with warm or cold water, whatever you prefer. So if you can tell as I'm rinsing this, parts of it look a little muddy until I rinse it. Make that a little bit cooler. It's a little hot on my hands. But it's probably because of the type of fabric this is. But I'm okay with it. I just wanted to dye this because I don't wear a lot of solid white clothing. Actually, I don't wear solid white clothing. I dye pretty much anything that I own that is solid white, except for tank tops, even though I am doing one today. I think it's still going to look really, really neat. So we are going to go put this in the washer, and I will be right back with you guys. All right, the next one we're going to do is going to be this tank top. This I'm just literally going to ball up, and we're going to use aquamarine, lemon, and fuchsia. So just some random aquamarine. Gonna get our yellow in there. So some of it be yellow and some of it will obviously turn green or orange with the fuchsia. So we will see. All right, we're gonna let that sit for a hot second and then we'll flip it over. So whenever you're wanting to do rainbow colors, especially in like a splatter type pattern like this, you don't have to make a red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. You can just use the 3 primary colors, or like I'm doing the more brighter versions of those colors, and you'll get all of the colors. Okay, we're gonna let this sit. We'll rinse it out, and then I'll go put it in the washer. Rinse this out. This one is going to look so cool. Pretty good so far. Let's move on to our largest piece of fabric. So what I'm gonna do for this one is I'm gonna make this one a splatter dye with the sterling blue, the pearl gray, and tan. So whenever I do a splatter, I just make sure to lay the whole piece out, but really bunch it. So very, very much like that, okay? And then we're gonna have some fun. So I'm gonna start with the gray because it needs a little bit longer to sit on there. It's not a very dark color. It gets kind of covered up very easily. If you can tell from the other camera, it is not a very aggressively dark color. Very light, very simple. So I'm gonna do the gray first, okay? Next, I'm gonna do the tan because the tan will take over some of the gray, and blue can take over almost anything. So we're gonna do some of the tan. And you can see it kind of starts out like a weird green color. It will tan up. Okay, so now we have the gray and the tan on there. And you can already see that the tan is starting to change from a weird green color, like it is in the bottle, to an actual brown color. So we're going to add some of this blue in here. Now I don't want to do too much because I don't want to overpower this fabric. My intentions for this fabric are to restart the Plum Street sampler Noah's Christmas Ark with a little bit of that tan and blue in there and that gray to break it up, so that way it looks earthy and watery. So I don't want the blue to be so overpowering, but I want it to be there. You know what I mean? All right, so I'm gonna let this sit for a hot minute, and then we're going to take the ball and flip it and kind of adjust the ruffles a little bit if we need to. And I don't think I really properly explained why I do the salt or put these trays in the bottom. So let me cover that really quick because I get scatterbrained and I do eventually come back to it. So the salt in my dye, I learned from my mom a very long time ago, and it could be all hogwash, but these are the tips and tricks that I know and have been using for years. So they're what I know. But the salt helps the fabric hold the dye more. You also, it's recommended, like if you get a new pair of jeans, your first wash, to put salt in the water because it helps keep the color longer. It's more important in darker clothes like black t-shirts and things like that. It'll just help it from fading for a longer amount of time. So I just do it in all of my dyes because, like you can see here, I'm never gonna wash this Aida after I rinse it out here today and pop it in the dryer. I'm never gonna officially wash it with like detergents. So I don't have to really worry about it fading other than the amount that it's gonna fade in general, because colors are always darker when fabric is wet. So they will have a natural fade once they are dry. However, as you saw today, I also did some clothing. So I always just do salt in it to make sure that I can get the most vibrant colors absolutely possible. All right, so we're gonna flip over our ball. And I use the grates because if you can see down here, the colors are running out, the excess, and I don't want it to sit in that because it's going to get all muddy. So the cookie racks, keep it elevated off the bottom of the sink so that way it's not sitting in the runoff and making a very muddied look. All right, so I grabbed the wrong bottle, but we're going to do the same process. Let me just adjust some of this. I think it's pretty good. I just can avoid these edges a little bit. We're gonna get the gray in there because again, the blue will cut over both and the tan will cut over some of the gray. So we don't have to really worry about that. We just wanna make sure that it gets seen and has its moment. Okay, then we're gonna do the tan. You see how you can tell on the edges, it is now brown and it's green as it first comes out. It does change. And then we're gonna sprinkle on the blue. And you can tell on the edges that even the blue lightened up. So it looks very dark as it comes out and it lightens up to this lighter sterling blue, closer to what's on the bottle. Oh, we're gonna have a big splash right there. It's okay. Maybe we'll stitch the whale on that piece. All right. And as you're watching the colors kind of process, if you notice like I want a little bit more tan here or a little bit more gray or what have you, you can just fill that in. A tiny splash of blue in there. Okay, I'm gonna let this sit, then we'll rinse it out. My dyed fabrics for cross stitching are not going to get a wash. I'm gonna rinse them out really well in the sink here and they're gonna go straight into the dryer so that way they get finished. So the way that I will rinse is I will pick up a corner or an edge and I will run the water over all of it. And after I get a pretty big chunk in my hands, I will also scrunch it out. Now, as you can tell, I have a decent patch right here that didn't get a whole lot of dye. So I can stop, I can scrunch up this little patch, and I can let some dye sit right here in this little patch for a second. Okay, so we'll let that process for a second. I don't want that big of a white patch on this fabric in particular. So you can modify it as you go, but we want to wait until that blue also color shifts. So you can see the tan is almost done shifting and the blue is working on shifting its color. All right, so this is what this fabric looks like before being dried. Very beautiful. Okay, and if you can see in the other monitor, there is no color coming out of that. So this is gonna go ahead, I'm gonna go pop this in the dryer. Okay, the next technique that we're going to do uses a baking tray. Okay, I am just gonna put this down here and I'm going to put a thin layer of water in the baking tray. Okay, I'm going to take this smaller piece of fabric and I'm going to fit the whole fabric into the baking tray. All right, so this one just kind of gives a more blended, watery look to the fabric once it is done. For this one, I am going to use gray and tan. And so we have our water in here. And you can just put it in the water and you can see how it kind of dissipates and fades in there like smoke. Some of this is sitting up, so it will get a harder dye, but it just allows for a more light dyeing. So we're just kind of putting this color everywhere. But there's water, so where it's popped out of the water, you'll get a higher concentration of the color that you're spreading on there. But in the puddles, it'll be lighter, which is where the tan comes in. So next we're gonna take the tan, we're gonna do the same thing. We're going to kind of put it everywhere, also get it in those splashes, those little puddles, and let it take over in certain spots. I use this technique, I've used it a few times, and I use it to get a more subtle color change. So that way it looks more like faded into each color. It's just a process that I think provides a different type of result. These two colors, if I wouldn't have done it in this way, they still would have modeled together really nicely because they're both pretty neutral type colors. However, this will just give it a different type of look and feel. Okay, and we can put a little bit more gray on there. All right, I'm gonna let this sit in this water for a little while. Okay, the last one that we are going to start and do is going to be our solid color. Now, let me empty this out so that way I can get out any of the sizing that's just chilling in that water. Also going to turn the water back on to warm. We're going to sprinkle in some of that salt. And we're going to do our orange dye. But we're also going to add a little bit of tan into it because I want it to be more of a pumpkin-y type orange. Just a little bit of tan should tone down this tangerine orange. And to mix, I always turn my sprayer on and move it around to hit those salt grains, as well as mixing in any colors if I am doing a blended color. So I'm gonna have this t-shirt go in. That is still pretty orange. So the tan did darken it up a little bit, but we're going to darken it up a little bit more with this wine color. So I'm going to add a little bit of this wine color in here as well. Lift this out. I'm going to stir it. It's going to deepen up that orange tone for us. This t-shirt, I just wanted to be orange, so I'm totally okay with what's happening to this. Okay, and let me get my Ada in there. I'm going to set it over here by itself so it can really sit in that water. I'm also going to rinse off my hands just very quickly. There'll be a little orange today, but that is all right with me. All right, let's turn to what is happening over here. Let's rinse this guy out. So you can tell that even though some of this gray was sitting in one of those pools with gray and tan, the gray is what took. And some of the areas, the tan is what took. And we get a really cool fossil, yet also you get some really nice blending, but it kind of looks like a weird marble style. All right. Very, very cool. Okay, so I did a little bit of cleaning up and our orange Ada has been chilling in the dye for a little while. So we're gonna rinse this out and get out all the excess orange. And I'm happy with this color. I am making myself a Halloween theme piece, if you cannot tell. And it will take a little bit of time to get some of this orange out because there is red in it as well. If you've also ever dyed your hair red, you know it's the dye that takes the longest to rinse out. Red is just its own beast. We've pretty much gotten this rinsed out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this glass small Pyrex and I'm going to stuff this piece of fabric, and I want it to fit nicely in this Pyrex, okay, but without falling, okay, because I want the excess dye to drip through and drip down into here. So I want it to be able to be floating. So you want a cup that is going to be small enough to hold your piece of fabric, but also to where you have, hold it down, but also to where you have depth below it, okay? So also I mixed up a bowl of black dye, okay? And I still have a little bit of this gray left. So I'm gonna kind of pre-mark where I want the black with the little bit of gray that I have left. So I want a little bit over here, a little bit over here, a little bit over here, and maybe a little right here. Okay, we're just gonna pre-mark it. Just a little, do a little bit there, a little bit there. Okay. And you can see that dye is going through, okay? And it's landing in the bottom, which is what we want. Okay, the gray is turning this kind of like a brown, which I'm okay with, but I would like some darker black. So I'm just gonna take tiny, tiny amounts at a time. And I'm gonna put it in those spots because I want just spots of black faded out dye on this bright orange. This is gonna be, I don't know for what piece, but at some point I'm gonna have the perfect Halloween piece for this, okay? I might already own it, who knows? Might be in my stash. Not for sure. But at some point, I will have the perfect dye for this, or the perfect pattern for this fabric. Sometimes I dye fabric for a particular pattern, but sometimes I just dye it because I think to myself, that would be a really cool color combination. Don't have a pattern in mind, but whenever I find the right pattern, I go, oh my gosh, I have the fabric for that already. I dyed it myself. But dyeing is really easy. And the thing is that it is hard to replicate. Dyers that are able to replicate, I praise them, but they have like formulas and they do it on mass scale and they are going at it with that way. Whenever I would dye, I would tell people, I will get you as close to the look that you're going for, but dyeing can be unpredictable. Especially like small scale whenever you're doing it in your home. So I would mostly only do custom pieces. And it was the people who took me up on that, they knew that I could give them a certain look, but I couldn't promise a certain look, if that makes sense. And that's how I feel about whenever I dye for myself. I'm going for a certain look, but if it turns out a little bit differently, like I'm not going to be mad at myself or the fabric or anything like that, because it will eventually be the perfect fabric for something. Okay, and all that excess black is going into the bottom there, okay? You can see that. I'm getting more concentrated on where I'm putting it because I do want some spots to be super black. And I know whenever I rinse it, it will fade out some. I'm gonna do a little bit, I'm gonna finish off this gray. Won't really do anything. Just finish it out. Okay, I'm gonna let this sit while I do the rinsing out of this t-shirt over here in this sink, and we will come back to that and rinse it out. That's as good as I'm gonna be able to get with my hands. Let's check this out. Took out more of the orange than I wanted, but look how cool. I definitely did not want this much black, but at the same time, dyeing is unpredictable. And I'm not mad at it because even though I did want more orange, I did too many spots. But even though I wanted more orange, this is going to be really cool at some point for a Halloween piece. And sometimes you get these little frays. I just pull them off, stick them on my paper towel. But okay, this does look pretty good. It's not what you were in, it's not always what you're intending, but it still comes out really awesome. And it is gonna fade a little bit, like I said, in the dryer. The colors are always more vibrant when the fabric is wet. So, also have to keep that in mind. But it is gonna be really cool. There's still orange and red coming out of this fabric. That is funny. All right, I'm going to go wash these clothing items and get them dry. And then once they are completely finished, I will show all the pieces to you, as well as a couple others that I dyed in different ways or used different techniques like folding and things like that. And we will talk about it all and wrap up this video. Okay, so the final reveal of everything that we dyed today in this video, plus some older dyes of mine that I used different techniques on. So let's talk about it. Let's do the clothing first. Now, the tank top and the other white shirt that I did not do a solid dye on came out really light, but I personally am totally okay with it. I didn't want it to be super crazy and wild, but the nice thing about dyeing stuff is if it didn't come out dark enough, you can always re-dye it. You can dye over certain colors easier than others. You can change up the look. You can do whatever you want. The other thing to keep in mind is that fabrics do play a part in how well they hold color, okay? Different dyes are going to hold in different fabrics differently as well. I also wanted to address a few more things as far as how I personally dye. I don't wear gloves. I know you're supposed to. I personally don't care. I don't have my hands submerged in dye for long enough periods of time. I get a little bit of staining, usually with blues, but I did a full orange bath today, so the reds will also stain your hands. Personally, I do not care. If that is something that you care about, definitely wear gloves. And the other thing is that whenever I was talking about professional dyers, they have like formulas and they have big vats and things like that. They're on a whole different level. And they also most likely use commercial grade dye pigments and things of that nature. They aren't using RIT dye. So it's a very different scenario if you watch a video from a professional dyer, different from somebody who dyes at home and dyes for themselves and a few people here and there throughout the year. And like I said, only speaking on my own behalf. So the first shirt that I'm going to show you is the one with the lace on the top. This is over 70% polyester. So the dye isn't going to take as well as if it's a cotton shirt, like the t-shirt that I did. So it's really soft, it's really fuzzy, has some threads from the Ada on it, but the dyes are going to hold differently, and I believe the special RIT liquid that you can get is for polyesters. I could 100% be wrong on that because I don't ever buy it, so I'm not for sure, but it's one of the reasons why it came out a little bit lighter. Also, this would have dyed a little bit darker if I would have left it on the fabric longer. So I might wear it a time or two the way that it is dyed, and then I can always re-dye it with the same colors, or maybe add in like a navy or something. I can change it up, darken it up, and it won't matter if the splotches don't land in the same place, because then it'll just look like a faded dye or a lighter color of a dye. So that's the beauty of dyeing some of your own clothing. But I sometimes love the style of something that only comes in white fabric at the stores. Like, I loved this shirt. I don't like wearing white. Personally, I don't like wearing white. I have thought many times of dyeing this shirt, which I probably will at some point, because if you watch my regular videos or follow me on Instagram, I've lost a significant amount of weight. So this shirt is kind of like a blanket on me at this point, but I had to wear a panda shirt because I dye under the name The Dyed Panda, so it was fitting. But at some point, when this shirt becomes absolutely ridiculous to wear, and it's getting close to that in public, I will probably dye it. I'll probably traditional tie-dye it for funsies, and just have a really cool dyed panda shirt and maybe wear it in videos every once in a while and just for like lounging around, hanging out at my house. So dyeing stuff is really fun, but I personally don't buy t-shirts that are white. The one that I did today was given to me with football season tickets. So they went with white shirts this year. And I wanted to dye it because I don't like white shirts. So, but every once in a while, I like a style or a fit of something and it only is offered in white. So I dye it. And usually I'm never mad at the way that it turns out. So there is that shirt. Now let's look at the tank top. Now this tank top, I wanted it to be like traditional tie-dye colors. So I wanted pink, yellow, and blue with some splashes of green, purple, and orange in there, which it definitely did do. It is light in color. This I am okay with being more pastel because even though it is mostly still white, I didn't want it to be crazy. And again, this doesn't super fit me anymore. And so it's rather big. And so I'm not going to be wearing it for much longer anyways. I'm mostly going to maybe wear this as I do housework or something, not as an undershirt for anything. And if I happen to, you'll get a little splash of color here and there. But it has some splashes of all of the colors. And again, if I would have left this on a little bit longer, they would have been a little bit more stronger. But this also has some spandex in it, which again takes the color differently. Yeah, this is cotton and spandex. But the spandex can throw off the hold that cotton can have. So you have to keep all these things in mind with clothing. Certain combinations of fabrics are not going to hold the dye as well. Now, this cotton t-shirt held the color really well, okay? I love that it kind of modeled itself. I was not going for it, but I am all about it. And it's just how it was kind of wrinkled up and sitting in the water in the sink. So you can see a little bit, there's like a giant white patch on the back, small one on the front. But you can see some of that lighter orange. You can see some of that red coming through, that Merlot that I added coming through, and even a little bit of the tan mixed in there. So I really like how this one turned out. And again, shirt's way too big. I don't wear white shirts, so I've never worn this out from doing things around town. But now I might actually do that. And they went with white because this year's theme was a white out game instead of an orange out game. So normally they're orange shirts. And we didn't go to the game, so I never wore the shirt even to the game. But it's a really, really nice 100% cotton. So yes, this did sit in the dye water longer than the other two shirts. However, it is 100% cotton, so it's gonna grab that color. And dyeing versus like tea and coffee dye, which I'll show you, they eventually max out on how much color they're gonna hold and how well it's gonna grab. So I'm not mad at this at all. And I actually really love the shirt now. I also like that it kind of made it hard to read like the advertisement on the back. I really kind of like that. It feels a little less obnoxious to me, the screen printing. Probably still won't wear this out in public because I just don't like the design, but it'll be a really nice shirt to do things just around the house. A lounging shirt. Okay, so let's talk about our actual fabrics. Before I reveal the ones that I did today, let's talk about a couple different styles. So I initially really wanted to do an ice dye, and I didn't have any ice. I tried making some, and for whatever reason, I filled up the trays all the way. I know how to make ice, but for whatever reason, some of the water I don't know what happened. Evaporated? No clue. So the cubes weren't big enough, and my ice maker doesn't work and hasn't for 10 years. And sometimes it just works out that way, but I love that I'm going to be able to I showed you the soaking method and dyeing while it's soaking in a small puddle of water, because I think it looks really, really cool. Okay, but ice dyeing, you're gonna get your fabric wet and you're going to bunch it up just like we did earlier today with the orange one and the blue, tan, and gray fabric. You're gonna bunch it up, and I like to take a glass bowl, okay, and I put one of the cookie racks on top of the glass bowl. So it has to be small enough to hold the cookie rack above, and the fabric has to be within the bowl. So that way, as the ice melts and the extra dye drips off, we talked about this is why I use the cookie racks, is so that way it doesn't sit in its in the extra dye and doesn't become just a muddied mess. Okay, so you're gonna take white fabric, you're gonna scrunch it up and stick it on top of the cookie rack that is sitting on top of a bowl. Okay, then you cover the fabric in ice, like a giant ice mound. All right, then you're gonna take the powdered RIT dye, not the liquid, the powder, and whatever colors you want, and you just sprinkle some of the powder, or as little to as much as you would like. You're gonna sprinkle the powder over the ice in randomized patterns, and as the ice melts, it turns that powder into a liquid dye, and it makes these really crazy cool transformations. It like blends things, it leaves speckles. It's really neat and interesting, and I no longer have examples of ice dye. I cannot show you, but it is really cool, and I will try to do an ice dye video soon, okay? So I will do one soon, even if I have to buy a bag of ice to get it done. So we will do one on this channel within the next, I'm gonna give myself till the end of April, but we'll get one in there, okay? It'll be a special little bonus video one week. All right, let's talk about another version of dyeing that we did not do today. We did not do coffee tea dye. There's a couple different ways to do this. So I like to take one of my giant stainless pots, my biggest stainless pot, and I put a whole bunch of water in it, and I buy cheap. I cannot express it enough. Cheap tea bags, okay? Like the box of 100 bags for like $2, the cheapest that you can buy. I get mine from Kroger. I get the s5e brand, and it's like $1.50, $2 for a box of 100. Do not drink this tea. It is not good quality, okay? But it is perfect for dyeing your fabric. If I am dyeing a whole bunch of pieces, I will put like 10 to 15 bags in at a time. Again, you only paid like 10 cents for each little tea bag. So $1 of tea to dye a bunch of pieces of fabric is not a horrendous deal. And it's gonna make a really nice tea colored fabric, okay? You can take it one step further if you want some darker patches in the fabric, and you can add some instant coffee grounds, okay? Again, I get mine at Kroger. I get the s5e brand, and they have a jar of instant coffee, and it's $1 or $2. And you only need 1 to 2 scoops for this giant pot mixed in with the tea bags. Once you have this going, it gets really hot. I use stainless steel tongs to pull my fabric in and out because I'm not going to stick my hands in boiling hot water of tea and coffee. But you'll put your fabric in, okay? And the way I got some of these like more burned looking spots
is by baking it. You do not have to bake your fabric, okay? So you can just tea or coffee or tea coffee dye your fabric. Coffee is gonna be a different kind of color of brown. Tea is gonna be a little bit lighter. Then together, you're gonna get kind of like this dirty, muddy look, which I personally really, really, really love. It looks really great for a lot of patterns, and it's beautiful like that, okay? And it does not take long. You don't have to let your fabric sit in there for a really long amount of time, to be quite honest. You can barely dip it in and it will be dyed if you make it as strong as I make it. But the longer you leave it in, obviously the darker brown, darker tan it will become. Now, if you want to take it one step further, you can turn your oven on to about 200 degrees, 250. Don't go any higher than that. And on a cookie sheet or a pizza pan that does not have holes in it, a solid cookie sheet pizza pan, we're going to bunch the fabric up again, okay? You're gonna let it sit on the pan in like a bunch. The pieces that are up on the ridges in the oven will burn a little bit, okay? You don't have to leave it in there very long. It depends on the type of fabric. This type of fabric did not take very long. I did not buy this piece of fabric. This piece of fabric was given to me. So it's a linen, but I don't know exactly what kind. If you know exactly what kind, there are different lengths of time that make more sense for the different fabrics. They're gonna take, certain ones are gonna take a little bit longer than others. Aida is gonna take a different amount of time than linen to get the look that you're looking for. So I leave it in for about 10-15 minutes, and then I just go and look, and I will look at it. I'll kind of, you know, like pull down a little ridge or something for a second and see how different or how darker the color is, and I'll see if it's where I want it to be. If not, I'll leave it in for another 5 to 10 minutes. I don't bake mine for longer than about 20 to 25 minutes at any given time, because that's usually about the time that I get the look that I'm looking for. So it's very much, all of this is very much what you like, what you prefer, okay? So that is coffee tea dye, coffee tea dye, and also with or without baking. Another style that I have done before is just a traditional tie-dye spiral. Traditional, very traditional. So you'll take your wet fabric, and this can be hard to do because this is not wet, but you grab wherever you want the center of the spiral to be. You grab the fabric while it's wet, and you literally spin the fabric until you make a little rounded up flower. It'll look nicer than that. And then you take rubber bands and you tie them in different directions around your little circle, okay? And then you only, to do this, I only used red, yellow, and blue, okay? And I do them in quadrants. So I usually do 3 rubber bands, and I put 1, 2, and then 1 semi-diagonal. I try to make the pie pieces kind of match, but you'll end up with 6 pie pieces. So 6 pieces, all right? You do 3 wedges blue. You do 1 of the blue wedges with yellow, so then you'll get your green, yellow, and then you do a 3rd yellow. And then you come in with your red, and then that's whenever you get your orange, your red, and your purple. And then whenever you unspiral it, you will get a traditional spiral. Okay, so let me know in the comments if you would like to see a video of any of these other techniques. A lot of people know how to tie-dye t-shirts. They're done the exact same way, so that's why I didn't include it. But if you would like to see it on a piece of Aida, I can do that. Just let me know down below. And same thing with coffee and tea dye. There's a lot of really good videos and tutorials already, so I felt like we could just talk about it. But if you would like to see me do it as well, I don't mind doing that. Just leave that information in your comment. But don't make that your only thing in your comment. We'll talk about that in just a minute, okay? So I took a folding technique from shibori, which is a traditional form of dyeing with indigo. And I did this folding method before, and I'm pretty sure the videos are on my Instagram. And there's multiple videos of how I folded this and dyed this. You fold it as a triangle, and then you just dye the corners and the sides, okay? So again, I only did pink, yellow, and blue, and I did the corners pink, yellow, and blue, and kind of expanded them down the sides, so the sides have the orange, the purple, and the green. So it's really cool where the colors kind of met in that triangle fold. And I made this. It's really cool. You can do this with blue that looks like indigo, or if you have real indigo dye, you can do this with a green, with a purple, any color. I just did it with the 3 colors to make the rainbow look. So there's several different ways to do shibori, and yes, it is a traditional way of dyeing for indigo, but you can use the techniques and folding methods to also dye for yourself. I've dyed using tiles before, folding around actual ceramic tiles on some bed sheets. So there are different ways that you can use other methods of dyeing to do non-traditional style or coloring. Okay, so that's another one that I've done before. Okay, let us talk about, okay, so I wanted this one to be really light because I wanted this for the Noah's Ark Christmas by Plum Street Sampler, and she's coming out with more this year. She's already released number 7, and so I wanted to make sure that I would have enough matching fabric for the whole series, or at least majority of it, if not all of it. And I tried to make it easy enough that maybe I could replicate this. So we have our gray, tan, and blue. And like I said, I wanted it really light. I wanted it really neutral. So that way the colors could still pop on it, but I would get that fabric effect that I have been looking for. Okay, and there are some spots that are a little bit darker, and that's just the name of the game with hand dyeing. So this is the splatter effect or splash effect that we did earlier today. Very nice. And just remember, we just took wet fabric, we scrunched it up, and then literally splattered from the bottles the different colors. The next fabric is the one that we did in the cookie pan, and this is how it turned out. So I really, really love this. This is the gray with the tan, and we did this floating in water. So you had those ridges where you got some of the darker coloring and the more pigmented of each of the individual colors throughout here. And then we had the puddles of water where some of them got kind of mixed, but some of them stayed distinct, okay? And they made this beautiful blend and modeling throughout this entire fabric. And this is just gonna be a really, really nice neutral for something. Kind of spooky, but also kind of not. So we'll see what gets put on this, okay? I'm kind of excited. And let me just show you, okay, this is about to be a new start, but these are the same exact colors. I did this the other week whenever I dyed 20 pieces. This is the same colors as this water technique, except this was scrunched up and splattered with the colors. Okay, so the same colors, same type of fabric, but totally different outcome because of the method that we used. So you're gonna get different levels of pigment with the different methods as well. Okay, the final piece. Now, I said this whenever we were first recording it. I wanted to have this piece be more orange, but I am not mad at all that there is more black than orange. And now that it is dry, it is crazy beautiful. Now, does that mean that I won't try this again to get a more orange with less black? No, that's definitely happening. But, guys, this is the solid single dye with the hovering in a cup splash dye. Okay? Two-tone dye, really simple. If you wanted to have put the black dye in a little bottle, you could have. Whenever I do this method, I personally prefer a spoon. You can do it however you would like, but is this not amazing? It's fabulous. I do want to do one where there is more orange and less black, like maybe the opposite of this. So I'll have to just not do as many black spots, but this is spectacular. This would also look really cool with a couple of bleach splotches, because the black would kind of turn like a yellow color, like a cream yellow color. It would look really neat. Well, the orange would, some of the black would, because we had it also in there that gray, but some of the black would also turn like a purpley color. So this turned out so good. I cannot wait to find a piece for this. And the back side has a little bit more orange than the other side, so this must have been the side facing in the bottom of the cup. Okay, so this was probably the side that I was putting the black on, and that's probably the underside. So you can see this spot in general right here is a little bit more orange on this side. There's a little bit more of that gray in the center of it. So that's why I say that. Or the gray is a little bit darker. Let me phrase it that way. But this is probably my favorite piece out of the three that we did today. Absolutely stunning. Absolutely gorgeous. All right. I really hope that y'all enjoyed this video. I had a blast making it and talking about the different types of fabric and how they hold and take color, as well as showing you 3 different methods for dyeing fabric and talking about a couple other. Like I said, down in the comments, let me know if you want to see any of those other techniques, which ones specifically. What did you think of the fabrics? Are you a fan of over dyed fabrics? Do you dye fabric yourself? And this video, I do want to do a small giveaway because this is for my 4th year anniversary, going into FlossTube year number 5, which is absolutely crazy. This is the start of year number 5. So I want to do a small giveaway that will probably be a pattern with fabric that I think would look cool together. Granted, you don't have to use the 2 together, but if you are interested in that, leave some of the answers to the questions that I just asked in the comments below. Also include your Instagram handle, and whoever wins, I will contact you, okay? So to enter, gotta answer one of the questions. Please be 18 and up in the United States and leave your Instagram handle. If you end up not being in the United States and don't leave an Instagram handle, yeah, it's not gonna work. So leave those things in the comments down below. And I really hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you want to see more, let me know. And I hope that y'all have a great March 1st. And thanks for being here. And I hope you continue on this FlossTube journey with me for year number 5. And I will see you next time. Bye, guys.